GrayHat attendees, and welcome to Getting In and Getting Good at Incident Response. So, as you'll notice in the subtitle, this is a Meet a Mentor program panel. So I'm going to talk just for a second about what that actually means. If you've joined BTV over DEF CON recently in safe mode, we launched a program called Meet a Mentor, where we collected information from a whole bunch of mentors and mentees interested in participating in this program. The program is closed at this point. We had an overwhelming amount of interest for it, but essentially what we're doing is creating programming for our mentees and for other mentors that consists of panels where all the panelists are mentors, and we pick topics that were voted for by the community. So the most interest that we got in technical topics was actually DFIR, log analysis, SIMS, malware analysis, and those types of topics. So tonight's panel is on incident response. It's going to be broken up into a couple different pieces, which are basically the getting in portion, the getting good portion, and then we're going to talk a little bit about tools, tech, methodology, and related topics. So what I'm going to do is ask a number of questions. I'm going to direct them at one panelist, after which anyone else is welcome to answer that question. Let's go ahead and start with some 30-second intros. So I'm going to just name each of the mentors and ask them to introduce themselves. So I'm going to ask Akasame first, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Thanks for inviting me. I work for a large organization here in Mexico. I'm responsible for several services, and one of those it's the SOC and the Incident Response team. I've been tutoring different students. I teach different colleges also here in Mexico. So I've been in IT for over 20 years, first in IT and then on InfoSec. And this is one of my biggest passions to be able to share as much as I can with everyone on security, on incident response, and on all technologies related to info security. So thanks for inviting me.
Great, thank you. Also, I realized that I'm looking at Discord usernames. So Akasame's actual name is Rhett, and you'll see him mentioned in the tweets and on the schedule. So I apologize for that. I'm completely in Discord mode.
No, don't worry.
So next, I'm going to ask Pierre to introduce himself. Luckily, his name is the same as his username.
Crafty that way. Thanks, everybody. My name is Pierre. I'm located in Los Angeles. I am an incident response manager for the Talos incident response team. I've been with the team for about 3 years or so, and I've been doing incident response as a consultant professionally for around 10 years, and I've been in information security for roughly about 20 years as well. Done a range of different things from CISO all the way to firewall analyst, etc. So lots of great stuff. Happy to share what I know and hopefully help people out.
Great, thank you. And then next, I'm going to call on Scuzzy Death, aka Neumann.
Hi everyone. Thank you for having me here. My name is Neumann. I'm actually located in Toronto, Canada. I am the Director of Digital Forensics and Incident Response for ISA Cybersecurity. I lead the cybersecurity practice in forensics and incident response there. I'm also on the global panel for EC Council, in particular guiding the CHFI certification. So that's really something that I'm trying to do and strengthen that certification so that to make it a more technical and to raise the bar for I think a lot of the new people coming into the industry. So what I want to do is, as part of this Meet the Mentor program, is to help guide some of the younger folks, help them learn the skills needed to be successful in digital forensics and incident response.
Thank you. And last but definitely not least, Triwolf, aka Lauren.
Hey everyone, glad to be here. I'm thrilled to be on this panel. Some amazing incident response professionals. My name is Lauren Proehl. Triwolf on Discord, Jotunviller on Twitter. very hard to spell. You can find it in the BTV tweets. I know it's confusing. I have two handles. I'm the threat intelligence manager at Marsh & McLennan Companies right now. Prior to that, I was a lead incident responder for CenturyLink. Prior to that, I did some light consulting work for an MSSP, incident response, security analysis, those types of things. And I love IR. IR was the first thing that I fell in love with in the security field. So it'll always be a huge passion of mine.
Great, thank you. So I'll actually introduce myself, which I always seem to forget to do. I'm Muteki. My real name is Cassandra. So I actually am not technically an InfoSec, but I do incident response specifically for O365 and Azure AD as a O365 sysadmin. So I do have a little bit of experience in this area, but I'm really looking forward to getting the whole picture from everyone here who has so much more experience and amazing perspectives. So very excited about that. And with no further ado, I'm going to jump into the questions. So I'm going to direct this at Rhett, aka Akasame. And this one is, what's your background and how did you get into your current position?
Okay, as I mentioned, I started back in '94, working as a webmaster. Well, the assistant webmaster for my university website in '94. That was like the first website for that university. So we started doing web related work, and I went to be the webmaster, and I started being different, managing different type of services, all based on inter services, the email manager, then the database manager, then the network manager. So I kept getting stuff to manage, no? So technologies to manage, I mean, uh, and that helped me being in touch with different technologies, different services, different protocols. So if you're the one that has to manage, you have to be really good at it. And if you've never used it, well, you have a really short period of time to get really good at it. So one thing is that I've always loved the challenge of getting a new technology and putting it to good use and getting really good at it. Uh, in that years, there wasn't many documentation available. Usually, you were the first to post that question on Google. So that was quite challenging. But Usenet in that time and then Google really helped us to to understand and learn how to use it. So for over 20 years, I did that, managing almost any technology, different, then managing teams. And one thing that I noticed is that in any of the places I worked for, there it didn't exist a security team, or at least a structure or official security team. So I became the IT the manager for the services and the security manager also. Okay, we need a firewall. Okay, who will put it? No, it's your it's your job to do it because it's IT. Okay, I will do it. So that's how I learned to put and manage firewalls, IPS, and from there it grows. Also, I'm very passionate about teaching. So 14 years ago, I started teaching IT related classes, and 7 years ago, I jumped to 100% specific InfoSec or cybersecurity position. It was on the red team, um, and a really good friend of mine invited me to his red team, and I always did that because I was the one that wanted to do it. So now I get paid to do what was really my passion. And from then, I decided to stick to cybersecurity and didn't look back. But it gave me a lot of background and uh, understanding of what the IT guys feel and know when you go with them, and you have to patch 2,000 servers because there's a really critical vulnerability, and how to communicate that and tell them, uh, I know how it feels. I know the rush to have to patch something that is on production. So that's kind of how I started. And I'm on my current position. As I mentioned, a friend invited me, so networking also helps. He invited me to my team, and then I got promoted to the blue team. So I just changed, as we say in Mexico, from being the forward or the striker on the team to being the goalkeeper. I'm talking soccer for you guys in the U.S. Or football. So basically, that's what how I got up to this position right now, and I love it. What can I tell you? I love being able to manage these teams, the blue team, the red team, the incident response team, and all those services that we have to provide to the business units in our company.
Great. So who else wants to share how they got to where they are? I'll take that as we're going to get into it more. And I'll go to the next question, which is going to be a fun one. Definitely going to be a fun one. So, what does a week in the life of a professional IR consultant look like? And I'm directing this one very, very deliberately at Pierre.
Lordy. Okay. And that was awesome background, by the way. A lot of us got started, I know, in similar sort of things where we got into one aspect of technology, and we learned the basics along the way, and then we stitched those together to be able to make a more comprehensive understanding of the technology backgrounds. You learn an operating system, you learn networking, you stitch together, you can look at logs for both, and then they put you in a corner and say, correlate those logs for me, would you? And that's how you get into security. So that's a little bit of my background in a nutshell. There's actually more to that, of course, but I'm going to talk about a week in the life of an incident response consultant. And what a week it's been. There are some weeks as an incident response consultant where it's very quiet. Honestly, it's a lot of sort of not quite predictable, because we always deal in the unpredictable and the unexpected and the incidents that are emergencies. But we often know what's out there. We get an idea of what kind of threats are happening. We get an idea of the types of things that we're likely going to be called about from a standpoint of our customers. And then we have weeks like this week where we have threats that have been simmering for a while, where you have ransomware situations that have been out in the wild for 2 years plus, that all happen kind of either simultaneously or at least in large amounts. That seems to be somewhat suspicious in its own nature. And that happens all at once. So some days, again, you are very much in resting mode, resting, research, retooling, and you take the time to skill yourself up, practice, learn more, research, be aware of all the things, and realize everybody has a life. So you can't do this 24/7. If you could, that'd be great. You would not, you'd burn out. And that's the challenge, is managing the marathon, not the sprint. Realize everybody wants to learn. We all have a desire for knowledge and to absorb knowledge. The challenge is to pace yourself in a way that will satisfy your own desire for knowledge, but not overload you. And finding that pace is really a big part of your own personal challenge. And one of the things I mentor when I talk to people in my own team, I've got a team of a number of folks, about 10 people that report to me. And part of my role there is managing them and giving them a little experience of what I've learned myself. And it's, pacing yourself. But certainly a day in the life could be, you wake up in the morning, you get on a status call where you talk about morning sync, about information, about new threats that are happening. You get called into a customer call where you have to scope an incident, and you have to listen to what they have to say, and listen carefully to the details that they say and they don't say, and take notes, ask intelligent probing questions, and understand how you can help them, and whether what service you offer is going to be appropriate for them. And then if you have alignment, for at least in our business, the way we do it is, if you have alignment, then we can go forward, and they may want to then proceed with us, in which case we would then engage. Then you ask another set of questions much deeper about more particulars, get access to their environment, start to get the data flowing. Because realize, as a consultant, you start off with zero access, zero understanding, zero reference to their environment. You have to learn all that on the fly. So you have to understand their architecture, understand their authentication process, their platforms, what's important to them, their critical data. There's a lot to consider. And so you narrow it down into objectives of what you're going to be working towards. Maybe you're looking at The general one is root cause analysis. How did this happen? Another good one is how can we prevent this from happening again? And then there's always the dangerous, what left the environment and what did the adversary have access to? Those are all loaded questions. See, yeah. So hopefully that helps. It can be very exhausting. It's a very satisfying feeling, though, especially when you get engaged with a customer and you're able to get in there as the adversary is still involved and you're able to prevent what could be, could be worse. You're able to get in there before this, let's just say, Cobalt Strike turns into ransomware, just to pick something out of the news today. And we've done that. And that's the best feeling in the world, is to get in there and say, we found this, we found this, we found this. Do these things right now. You've got 12 hours to do this. You don't do this in 12 hours, you're done. You better be looking at your backups. Otherwise, you can do it in 12 hours, you get it done in 10 hours, or like that. You might be able to sneak ahead and block this and prevent this from happening. Being able to do that successfully a few times, it's a great feeling. The worst one is we get in there and they give you some information and you start talking to them about what's happening, and all of a sudden, right as you're talking to them, things start going bad. That's a less good feeling. But you're still able to help them to figure out how it happened and recover. So I've talked enough. I'll take a break.
So who's going to jump in on that too? Because I think that's pretty juicy this week.
No, I think I'd like to basically mention basically the same thing as what Pierre had mentioned earlier, is that the best feeling about being an incident response is being able to stop the attacker from moving further ahead. And I like to kind of draw a bit of a parallel to like Lord of the Rings. Like you're Gandalf there standing on that bridge and you say, you shall not pass. That's probably like the best feeling ever, and you're basically kicking the attacker out of this environment, and they're going to keep trying to come back in, and you're like, nope, and just denying them access, denying them entry. It's just the best feeling ever. And that kind of drives my team and drives me to go forth and do this for our customers and help them out.
So that actually leads really well into the next question, which is going to be directed at Lauren. And that one is, what makes you particularly interested in this area? Well, topic/area of interest. Like what makes you so invested in and interested in incident response?
Yeah, so I started out in security in a SOC. And after about 6 months, I was like, man, I'm sick of looking at the same like tech support scam alert for like 19th day in a row. Something needs to be on fire. And then I started reading about IR and like hacks for pancake stuff and like tons of stuff, honestly, from Talos too. And just reading all the stuff that's out there. I'm like, this is where I want to be. Like, I want to be basically chasing ambulances and going in the ER and like triage, let's get them back out there so they can go back into the fight. In fact, like when I interviewed for my first IR position, I said, I want incidents where I have to sleep on the floor of the office because everything's melting down around me. And like, for me, I'm a very adrenaline seeking person. I know you can't tell from my monotone voice, but like, I love it when things are going really bad because that's when you figure out, hey, do I know my stuff? And how well do my team work together? And like, it literally is a race against good versus evil. So, I also like just, hey, this is like helping people. I know we were talking about IR consultancy and like a week in the life of that. You could do IR for an internal company as well. Like I've done that. I've done the consultancy part and that's fun. But I've also done it where I was a part of systemic change in transforming the security posture of a company. And they needed that because they couldn't afford a retainer, honestly. So it was great. There's a lot of different routes. And I just like how stimulating IR is for sure.
Thanks.
Just to add on that real quickly, absolutely. My first IR role was internal. So my first actual like 4 IR roles were as internal people for sure. And you learn a lot of that before you go out as a consultant, because I think the consultants is usually as the experts we try to be, but we at least try to be, try to pull that off if we can. But you got to learn it somewhere and you might as well learn it internally. And there's a lot of need for that. So it's absolutely a great thing.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like there's I feel like there's more of a need for defenders. Especially I think every corporation, doesn't matter what you're doing, right? You technically are a tech firm. You've got servers running, right? It doesn't matter if you're manufacturing cars or like milling paper. As long as you have control systems, as long as you have servers, laptops, you're technically a tech firm. So all of that needs to be defended.
Yeah,
that's
actually, oops, sorry, go ahead.
No, you're good. I was going to say that's the dirty little secret that I like to tell everybody that wants to get in the field is there are more defense jobs than hack button pen test jobs. And like, you want to get in, go after the blue team roles.
So actually, I just saw someone post a question, which is kind of relevant to that, and that is, where do you see incident response progressing in the next 5 or 10 years? So, maybe it's kind of interesting. We talked about consultants, but and also internal staffing. Do you think it's going to go one way or the other, or is there some other kind of practice on the horizon? I'll throw that out to anyone who wants to answer.
My first instinct is it's sort of a pendulum. I've seen it be internal before, mostly the IR retainer model and the IR consultancy model sort of picked up maybe about 8 years ago, I'd say, and then it's kind of been the focus of the high-end IR stuff. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to stay that way. I think it will sort of normalize and sort of swing between the two. I think there's a need for both, though. And what I see IR doing, though, is continuing to evolve as the threats evolve and continuing to provide value to customers when they have their worst day ever, and really giving people a sense of ability to scale when they have a crisis that they cannot manage. I'd love all my customers to have a good plan, trained people, knowledgeable folks, the right tools, and then call us only when they have hey, can you verify this? Or I've got a couple customers like that. They call us up and we're really just kind of giving a second set of eyeballs and giving a thumbs up and say, yep, you guys did a great job. Or, hey, did you look at the memory collection? Because there's this thing here that you may have missed. And that's something to consider as well. That's where I think it's going to go. It's going to continue to go in the same place. I don't see a really big sea change there. But I could be wrong. I'm not necessarily a prognosticator, but.
So that actually leads into another question that was lined up that actually is directed at Neumann anyways, and that is about key skills that someone would need when getting into incident response. So you can take both of those and run with them. Go ahead.
Sure thing. I'll just finish up what the comment I wanted to say for Pierre is that I think where I see incident response, because at the end of the day, it's still very much an adversarial game. So I think we're getting faster from a defensive perspective. A lot of automation is kicking into place, a lot of machine learning that speeds up our ability to react and to defend against some of these attacks. Similarly, on the attacker side, they're also using automation. Obviously, we all know and are waiting for AI, but I feel like I might age out before true AI actually kicks in and saves us. I'm already starting to give up on that one, but I think it's still very much an adversarial game. I think we will get faster, and then we have been getting faster already. I think if you look at some of the statistics in the past, whether it's from Ponemon or whatnot, the amount of time to detect has considerably come down, and I think that is because of the fact that within the blue teams we're getting better. We're getting faster, we're getting stronger, and we're raising that bar. And so having good mentorship like these really goes a long way to bringing new people in, training them, and getting them ready. And I guess that said, I'll perhaps talk a bit about some of the skills that would most likely help in that area. I'll start with the technical, and then I'm going to switch over to more on the soft skills, because I really believe the soft skills is what I look for in good IR folks. So I'll start with the technical first. And I think a good person in an incident response should have some foundational technical skills. And it's good if they have some basics in networking. Understanding some of the underlying protocols, the basics in how traffic flows within a network environment and how it's interconnected. Knowing the common ports is pretty important. Second one is also understanding or having a very good foundation in operating systems and the administering of these systems. Knowing how an operating system works, is fairly important when it comes to doing some of the forensics works that we have to do, and also to how do we detect endpoint related attacks. And of course, obviously, having basics in some of the forensics acquisition skills. So being able to pull an image, analyze an image, how do you run some of the e-discovery scripts to look fairly quickly for specific indicators that you're trying to target. And then last on the technical skills is, and this one again, I think that there's a lot of really good talent on this panel, so I think maybe some of them will challenge me on this one. The technical ability for an individual to do research, and by research I mean attacker research, whether it's using OSINT, using TechInt, to also hunting in that informational space, so threat hunting or threat intelligence. So those are the technical skills that I think from a basic level they should have. And then now I want to switch to the soft skills, because really when I'm looking for a candidate to hire, soft skills is really what I'm really going for. And some of the best soft skills are, I think Pierre spoke a little bit earlier about, having the attention to detail, not just, an eye for detail, but also an ear for detail. Obviously, as an incident responder, you got to be cool and calm under pressure. Everything around you is on fire. You are really, you're the calm in the storm that everyone has to depend on. So, having that ability is very key. Another good soft skill to have is good time management. Obviously, it's an emergency. You are most likely working 24/7. Being able to prioritize your time is very important. Another one is good to have as well as being organized. And I know some incident responders are completely messy, but they're geniuses and they're a mess. But being organized is important to me, I think, as well. And last but not least, and this is a threefold one, is being a good communicator. So not just being able to speak well and communicate some of those incident response points, but also to write them out, not just in emails, but to do reports. And then the last but not least is to have the soft skill to be able to troubleshoot and problem solve on the fly. And if I can throw things at you and you're able to react appropriately, using intelligence, using research, I find those type of skills probably the best. And at that point, I'll turn it over to the rest of this expert panel to discuss on some of these topics.
Yeah, anyone else welcome to contribute. I think this is a really valuable question that a lot of mentees are asking.
Yeah, I'll jump the gun. I know this is a question that's later that I was going to take about the one skill that's key to getting good at IR. But like number one for me is communication. Number one, I can teach you technical all day. If you're a jerk to people on the phone, or if you don't know how to effectively communicate like what's happening at a not technical level, like that's not helpful for me. Great example. I was doing an IR call one night, and this is like, I'm in threat intel and threat hunting right now, and I still go back to IR cases. When it's IR, it's all hands on deck. So don't think that like, hey, I'm in the SOC, I'm in threat hunting, I'm never going to do IR, because you probably will be pulled in. Got on the phone, you've got an SVP, a VP, a manager, a director, and then a bunch of technical people. And this SVP is asking a technical person a question, and they're just not answering. And they're like being super rude about it. They're like, well, you don't understand how email works. That's not how email works. You don't know how it works. And so this SVP is like, I'm pulling the CIO in. This is bullshit. Like, screw this. And it like, the whole incident was almost hosed because they didn't want to work with us. They didn't want to step back and say, hey, how can we collaborate and fix this? So really, number one skill, communication. Go take some journalism classes to figure out how to write. Go to Toastmakers if you need to figure out how to speak in front of people. Like, just work on all communication skills.
Anyone else want to jump in on this one?
Yeah, I'll again, it's going to be a lot of similar stuff. I want to also identify some of the things that were said. Absolutely, communication. We all agree on that. Written, verbal, all that's very, very important. Because also take notes. You got to be able to take notes when you're in a really high stress situation, and looking at the comments or the information that the customer's giving you in short little bits as you're going through the initial conversation with them, and taking those notes and then correlating them through. A lot of it also is that innate curiosity. You can't teach that. You need to find that, and that's one of the things that makes a great incident responder is the ability to learn quickly, curiosity. Those two are skills, and communication. Those three together are really the kind of trifecta of what I look for when I hire as well. For technical skills, a lot of things we just talked about, all the OS basics, all the networking, all those things like that. Learn the basics first. Basics will stay the same. The threats that use them will change, but you'll still know how to interpret them if you know what the basics are.
Yeah, that's a great contribution. I think we covered quite a lot, and the only thing that I actually would add to that, as someone who does a small portion of IR, is that we're seeing more and more cloud-based incidents, and there is a certain amount of shifting that needs to happen to move into a better understanding of how all of these basic concepts actually apply in the cloud. So networks look a little bit different. Similar concepts, but they're implemented in a very different way. Um, you know, the whole AWS shared responsibility model changes like what you actually focus on when you're looking at logs or trying to assess the scope of a compromise. So that's kind of my contribution to that. Um, so the next question I'm going to direct at Rhett, and this one is: there's a lot to learn in this area. When you started out, did you have a clear learning path, or was it trial by fire? And are there any resources you can recommend to learn from, like YouTube channels or websites, that type of thing?
Yeah. Well, maybe you already figure out my answer. I mentioned it. It was trial by fire. I was always the thrown first to the front of the line when something bad was happening, and this has been my life for the past 20 years, trying to solve other people's problem that become my problem, and that I have to fix it. Uh, and that was before. Now that I'm responsible of an internal SOC and an internal incident response team. One of the I was thinking on the previous question, and one of the things that I was maybe adding to the answer is that in an internal team, it helps to really know the business, the different business. In a large company like FEMSA, that we have a lot of business units in and different verticals. It You need to be really good at technology, at cybersecurity, but you also need to understand and know the internal business process, and what's the critical infrastructure, and you have to take that into consideration when you're doing this type of work. So my background, it was trial by fire. I think it kind of still is sometimes. And on the resources, well, I use a lot of mainly GitHub. I'm one of those people that have first I had one browser with 20 tabs on a window. Then I have a second window with other 20 tabs. Now I have two browsers open with different windows and different tabs, one for each project or for each investigation or something. So I don't know. For me, the worst days are when my browsers crash and the history doesn't, or the restore from my tabs doesn't come back. That's like a really bad day for me. So what do I have open? I have a lot of GitHub. I try to bookmark everything on GitHub. I keep Twitter open. I keep uh, YouTube open. Specifically, there's always or I've noticed that in cybersecurity, there's always some guy that already did curate a list of this, curate a list of that. For incident response, there's a really good one that it's called Awesome Incident Response. I can share it later on the chat on GitHub. But if you look for Awesome Incident Response in GitHub, it's a huge list with a lot of information. Also on resources, one of the good things I don't know if you can say that, but through this pandemic, one of the good things is that there's been a ton of resource available, like this, like GrayHat, for example. Uh, Everything is available online now. Most of the cons are now free to be remote, or the cost has come down. So for people like us that don't live in the States, getting to attend virtually to these different conferences and to have access to these panels or to these talks has been a huge improvement. I've been bombarding my team with conferences. Okay, this weekend now we have this weekend GrayHat, for example. The previous weekend, in 2 weeks, it's the attack on, and in 3 weeks is the one from Spectre. So I don't know. There's a ton of content that has been available. So that's one of the good things that has happened in 2020. The few, but this is one good thing that has helped us a lot. And my team has grown exponentially because of this access. All the capture the flags available. So when there's a quiet time for that, they aren't really common in incident response. You can exercise, and by that I mean you can do capture the flags. You can do all these sites that are coming up. The to keep you exercised. The um, um, have I no? I mean the hack the box, for example. The try hack me, for example. Those sites help you keep getting understanding technologies, understanding attacks. Of, of course, going to Twitter and to different cybersecurity news feeds, and as I think Pierre mentioned, every morning you have to check the news to check what's the new attack, the new ransomware, how it's under reading the threat intel related to that. And I that's how I operate. I every morning 6-7 in the morning, I take all the best articles and I send them to all my teams, and okay, check this, and please check if it can happen to us, if we are um, if we can be victims of this type of attacks. The SOC team check if we can detect this attack. So that's how we operate. So I mean, all the information is out there. All the best uh, content is available on Twitter. Follow all these people that have that are presenting in these type of conferences. All of them is great content. You mentioned hack pancakes. The Chris Sanders investigation theory training. It's really accessible, and it's great content for any security analyst. It helps you. Uh, it's it's not practical, but it helps you grow all the soft skills and all your analytics skills uh, extremely well. My team has grown a lot from this content. Those are some of my options.
No, that's great. And you mentioned the Chris Sanders training, and that's definitely come up
Yeah.
in I think every single like panel we've had or any like talk I've seen, it gets mentioned. That's really great.
Okay.
We'll see if
So
we can
check the
post that.
bingo for yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Another thing you mentioned is CTF. So I know that a couple
Yeah.
people here have done a bunch of them, and OpenSOC has traditionally been run through Blue Team Village at DEF CON, and it actually is running at GrayHat this year as well. So does anyone else have resources or suggestions they want to add for that? Like how to learn these skills other than what I mentioned?
Yeah, other one. I mean, Rhett gave the gambit. Honestly, if I could have just like taken notes during that, that's what I'd pass out to newbies. But I take a multi-pronged approach. I benefit a lot from doing, and I will actually be devil's advocate here and say I don't really like CTFs. I don't learn from them. They are like fake scenarios to me, and that makes it really hard for me to translate to real life. One thing that's really helped is doing practical exercises. So things like the DFIR report, for 15 bucks a month, they'll give you memory captures, PCAPs, evidence files, samples, and you can go and just run through their entire investigation and see what they saw. See if you can find what they saw. Chris Sanders' practical packet analysis. I love Chris. Chris is amazing. Basically everything he's published. But he gives you hundreds of Wireshark exercises to run through to learn how to analyze packets. There's a couple more. Like if you just read case studies, that's going to be the biggest things, or where people actually walk you through the steps of an investigation and provide the evidence. Malware traffic analysis is great. And I know it sucks, but like you got to get a lab at home. Most likely your employer, unless they make big bucks, right? They're probably not going to have like a training zone or a lab for you to work out of. So just get something. 32 gigs of RAM is kind of all you need, and then get VirtualBox. Set up a Windows 10 server, set up an AD server, run through that so you have a place to detonate safely. And I'm not saying like, hey, every single hour of your day needs to be in labs. You need a life, don't burn out. But you got to train on real world assignments with real world samples and data.
Yep, good stuff.
So I'll second that as well. So take a look at Malware Bazaar, abuse.ch, get good malware samples, and then run them in the sandbox, analyze them. Another one that you could use is some of the adversarial data sets. Take a look at the Mordor data set. That's a really good one. Again, take the data in, throw it into your flavor of a SIM, and run your analytics on the data, do the correlations, write the queries, and look for the evil inside that data set. And more often than not, you should be able to find it because, like I said, these are all curated data sets from most likely real world like APT scenarios that they've done. So you should be able to find that.
Very cool. All right, so the next question here is actually doesn't have a responder listed, so I'm going to throw this out there and see if anyone feels like they have a good scenario to contribute. This one is, was there a specific case, incident, or project that made you realize you'd leveled up and gotten from good to great at what you were doing? So when did it feel like you felt a little bit of you knew what you were doing? And I see people laughing a little bit, and I know that this because everyone has imposter syndrome. Everyone thinks they're terrible at
yeah.
what they do. So I'm asking you to just be like completely, self-absorbed and think you're the greatest thing ever. So dig deep for me, guys.
I've got one. It was another sort of, this is going to go to ransomware really quick sort of things. And we got in and I was able to both calm them down from a standpoint of they're very much in a panic mode. This was ironically not today, but it was another healthcare environment. And they were headed towards inevitable ransomware. We started seeing things, move through the environment, et cetera, et cetera. And we knew what to do because we've done this a number of times before. And I was able to calm them down and get them to listen to our instructions as far as what they needed to do and convince a very reluctant C-level executive that they needed to segment their network immediately and also deploy multi-factor immediately and also deploy endpoint protections immediately. They had the staff to do it, and the staff was actually exceptionally good at executing this. But they needed to basically arm wrestle that C-level executive, calm him down, and say, it's okay, just do it. And it literally was a 3 o'clock in the morning, hour-long conversation where I was just going round and around and around and said, if you don't do this, you're going to be in ransomware tomorrow. And finally got it. And that's where, again, it's more soft skills success. Obviously, the technical success was there too, because they didn't get ransomware. They only had 90 systems impacted out of 18,000 systems. Their hospital wasn't impacted directly, except for one small glitch. We won't talk about that actually. But again, success, that felt really good. And that was like, oh, hey, we knew exactly how to do this. We knew how to approach it. We knew what the adversary was going to be doing. We knew how to counter it. And we were able to execute it very quickly. That was a very good day.
Nice. All right, who's next?
I'll go. Yeah. So imposter syndrome is very real. I do think everybody has it, and don't freak out if you do. You also just need to realize that, like, hey, you need to be able to sing your own praises sometime. So when I started in IR, a good friend of mine, Trent, was like, oh my God, like I computers just like bow down to him. I don't know how he does it. And so I would always try to work with him to learn what he's doing. And there came an incident one time where he asked me questions and I had an answer for every single thing he asked. And I was like, this guy's been doing this like 20 years. Okay, like either I can read minds or like I actually am getting the process down. I'm getting more confident in it. And in that same incident, there was a more junior person working with us. And when they asked questions, I was able in turn to say, here's what I think you should do. Here's the next logical path. And that just kind of reinforced like, I do know what I'm talking about. I do know where we need to go. Yes, it's scary in IR. Like 90% of the time you're walking in, you have no idea what's going to happen. You don't know what you're dealing with. Like you're standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark, hoping that your next step is rock instead of the air. But you'll get more confident with it. And it's really just about practice and like take a deep breath. You're the expert in the room most of the time. And just be confident in knowing that.
Very cool.
I think for me, I think it was the first time one of my analysts came up to me and basically asked me for advice on a particular attack. And I'm so like all of us. I think we're just so used to being like doing the analysis ourselves and being able to put out the reports and have that information available. But when somebody is looking up to you like an expert and you are able to actually guide them, that was I think like the first time. And this was an interesting one because he had gone down the rabbit hole, which I think when we're all learning, we all did the same thing, right? And I was immediately able to point him out of the rabbit hole and say, look at the context here. Is this attack going to succeed on this particular technology stack? Yes or no? He took a look at it and he says, well, this web shell is targeting a Drupal, attack or vulnerability. He says, okay, so what is this system running? IIS. You have no power here. And then I was able to pull him out of that. And again, it's just like that was just one example. And I was like, I knew right away from there. I was like, oh my goodness, I've turned into one of those graybeards.
So, Rhett, do you have a story of a time
Yeah.
when you felt like you mastered something or you mastered it?
I would say when you're able to predict or anticipate to the attacker attacks or process, that you predict what you think will happen next, and it does. And you when I was thinking that when you become the narrator of the story and you say, and now like a documentary of nature, and we see the fox running through the hill, he now will try to go after that, and then it happens. So when you're seeing the attack and you tell your team, now he will try to do this and this and this and this, and that's what happened, and everyone is seeing it on real time, and you're able to like block him from doing that, or you observe what is going on and exactly what happened, and okay, now kick him out of here and do this and this and this, and it will be over. When you can anticipate, it's when you think, oh well, I think I've learned something after all, that I do have some experience in this area. I would say that, and it happened a few times in the past. So being able to do that and respond quickly and detect it quicker, that's really good. And I think it covers this question.
Yeah. I'm actually going to contribute a little bit too, because I'm the moderator, but I dabble too. So, and one thing I realized is I actually reached out to a colleague today to ask about some questions for this panel and for the one tomorrow that we're running on seams and log analysis. And I I phrased something as, it's not really my job, so I kind of want to like check with the experts about things. And then he wrote back and was like, yeah, but you actually do a ton of incident response, and you've like prevented a whole lot of big issues. And in my own position, I work a lot with O365 and a lot of the logging tools, some seam type software and things like that. And for me, the the best time that I realized that like I kind of knew what I was doing was I was at a Christmas party. I was like 3 drinks in. My work laptop was in my bag, and on my phone I saw like a ton of flags or flagged events come in. I was like, "Ah, shit." And it was like, I could look at it and kind of like see what was going on. And I wound up having to pull up my work laptop, and so I'm sitting in like the corner of a bar on my laptop at like 8 at night looking through logs, and it only took me like 10 minutes to basically analyze the situation, make a decision, lock out the account, send the notifications I needed to send because that's kind of my part of the puzzle, and even do a little bit of investigation to verify that I did not see logs for any resources being accessed that were critical or contained sensitive information. And it was basically like, half an hour later, I was on my next drink. And I'm like, hey, maybe I actually know a little bit about what I'm doing. So yeah, but I think it's important, and it's great that everyone has a story about how you kind of realized that you were getting good at what you do because of that. Like we talk about, like everyone has imposter syndrome. Lauren, you described it very well when you told your story. I think that we really need to trust that we can learn the skills, because if you're afraid that you're never going to get good at something, it's a lot harder to try. And if you don't try, you'll never succeed. So it's important to consider these stories. And with that, actually, I'm going to point the next question at Neumann. And this one is, IR can be stressful and time sensitive. How do you balance the demands of your role and still have a life?
Okay. Yeah, that's a tough one. I think we're all always constantly trying to juggle that. I'm gonna break this up into two parts. First part is what I call blue sky times, and I think as a person, we need to focus on being prepared for the eventuality that you will be in an incident response and in an emergency scenario. So first things first, healthy body, healthy mind. That means make sure you take care of yourself, eat well, exercise, be good to your body. Second part to that is mental health. I mean, like you said, there are times when we work 24/7 because of the fact that we're trying to get to the bottom of an attack or try to fend off, a persistent attacker. The mental stress on us, because we have competing priorities in life. We have families, we have children, that sort of thing, on top of the work that we have to do. This type of mental stress can take an impact on your work. So make sure that you take care of your mental health as well. Make sure you take breaks. Make sure you know when to step away. Make sure you know when to ask for help. And so that's something that I think all of us need to be very aware of, and to help one another in that type of hour. And again, that's the blue sky portion of it. Second part to that is that I think a lot of the other panelists have already mentioned this. Training, learning. It is an adversarial game. We are going up against very, very smart individuals. We need to learn, and we need to constantly be good at what we do. So training, learning, reading up on things, looking at the wikis, going to GitHub, learning some of the code there, running them, going to online training, taking certifications, that sort of thing. So it's constant learning process. Obviously, CTFs can help because there are some applicable skills there, and those are highly encouraged. Now, obviously, in an emergency situation, which is the second part of this, I think time management prioritization is very important. Being able to do that well during an emergency is very critical. So again, with especially when you're working with your clients, or if you're working with your own organization, first things first, obviously, is to focus on stopping the bleeding, right? And then second part to that is to then target sort of the highest severity and most impactful issues. And then the last part to that is managing expectations of not just your clients, your C-suite, your managers, with good communications. So being able to manage their expectations and say, look, I can definitely stop this, or I can do this for you, I can help you with this particular scenario. this containment strategy is failing, I need help. Managing those expectations by conveying that information back to your management team, back to your supervisors is key. And that will most likely save you a lot of hassle, save you a lot of heartache in the long run.
Very well put. Someone else want to contribute to this as well?
Yeah, one quick addition to that. So all excellent points, of course. One of the things we do in our practice to help with that, hopefully, is we have a role called an incident commander. And that incident commander is responsible for handling a little bit of the coordination of the stuff between what our findings are and refining that down to a message we can then give to the customer and handling that communication between the customer and the consultants. And then also making sure that everybody's working on something that's not overlapping. We don't have 5 people looking at the same disc collection. We don't have, some sort of a issue where we're ignoring a piece of evidence that's important, and thinking through the overall arc and timeline of the event and say, well, we have firewall logs. So we know this happened here. Have we looked in the firewall logs for anything that might correlate to this, etc.? And doing that sort of analysis part of the investigation, making sure what we're looking at makes sense to look at it, not just we're burning time looking at disks because we have the disks. No, let's look at the things that are necessary and important and prioritize those things. So that helps to reduce the stress from a standpoint of workload and making sure that there's clear communication, clear prioritization, and also tells people you've been working too long, go take a walk, take a break, that sort of that. Every team should have somebody whose responsibility is to do that, and then someone should keep an eye on them too, making sure that they don't overdo it, because they're likely the people they're going to try and overdo it as well. It's tough though, especially when you have a situation where you're doing maybe, let's say, customer-facing work, and you have multiple customers at once that all have the same incidents at once. You're trying to help everybody at once. You can't always help everybody. One of the things we've come to realize recently, professionally, is just that. We have to draw a line. We have to say, you know what, we have 9 active incidents right now. We're done. We can't do anymore.
Setting boundaries, I think, is also a very important part of this.
Yeah, I want to kind of reiterate what Pierre just said. There's a big piece of this that comes back to the getting into incident response. And that's something that I tell my mentees and anybody that I have a chance is interview your manager that you'll be working for. An interview is a two-way street. Just because you want to get in doesn't mean you should accept any position that's offered to you. You want to make sure you have a manager that's going to take care of you, and like exactly what Pierre said, recognize when you're overworked. I'm notorious for no, screw you guys, I'm not taking vacation. No, I'm going to keep working for 18 days straight. And it takes my director stepping in and be like, Lauren, you are slurring your words, and I'm pretty sure you just fell asleep on that Zoom call. It's time to go. And that's what a good manager will do for you and help you manage that balance and the demands of the role. And also, they're going to tell you, hey, take a comp time or comp day if you've been working incidents too much. So make sure you're interviewing the manager, but also talk to your network of people. I'm sure everyone knows networking is like the cheat code to getting a job, but ask people, hey, is Marsh & McLennan Companies a great place to work, or is Lauren just blowing smoke, right? They'll tell you honestly. And you want to know that before you get into something like IR that you're going to dedicate a lot of time to.
Yep, absolutely.
Definitely. Cool. So this actually rolls really well into the kind of more technical portion of this panel. So it's kind of interesting because I put out a call for questions, and I got everything from like general career questions all the way up through very technical questions. And in constructing this panel, I wanted to keep it a bit like more in the middle from that. But I did want to actually cover some kind of incident response technical standards. So the first one, actually, I'm going to direct it back at Lauren so you can keep talking. There are a number of IR frameworks out there, for example, NIST and SANS, each outline steps to take to respond to an incident. Which ones have you worked with, and what were the pros and cons in your experience?
So I've only ever worked with SANS. I know that there's overlap between NIST and SANS. I think NIST is just more condensed than the SANS steps. I think there's 6 in SANS. But the biggest thing is the high level ideas are, number one, you got to prepare for an incident. Like, you always spar before you go fight. You don't just jump in a ring with like Mike Tyson and be like, hey, I'm going to beat him. That's not how this works. Then you get into like detection analysis, getting rid of people, recovering, and then what do you do after the incident? So having those pieces are key. So SANS is preparation. And this is going to be my GCIH retest live. Identification, containment, eradication, recovery, and lessons learned. So I'm super big about 1 and 6, preparation and lessons learned. My biggest thing is we got to figure out, hey, how do we prevent Ryuk from getting in again? Because I don't want to work that incident. I'm sure y'all don't. The pros is it gives you a really, really structured way to go through incident response. You have firm mental checkpoints of like, all right, we identified it. Now we're going into containment and stop the bleeding. The cons that I've seen when you're working with these like frameworks is, especially with newer incident responders, they get very hung up on, I am in identification or I am in containment and I cannot go to eradication yet, or I cannot go to recovery yet. These are more to me like mental reminders, and you can flow in between these steps as you need to and as new information arises. You may have an actor that's moved laterally, and then suddenly when you're doing identification, you figure out, or containment, you figure out you find another thing and you need to do identification for this other system. So just keep that in mind. Great for structure. You don't have to keep going in order and never go back. And just make sure that you're following it all the way through. This isn't like a pick and choose, hey, we're only doing 2 through 5. You need to do 1 through 6.
Great. All right, so let me, I just lost my page on my place. Oh, actually, there was another question that's sort of related that was asked in the chat, and that is, organization was mentioned as a soft skill to have. What tips and tricks do you have to keeping organized during an incident? So actually, that relates pretty well to the steps. And I'll throw this out to anyone who would like to answer.
Notebook.
Taking good notes. That's a really big part of it for sure, because you're going to get thrown a lot of information at you, and you need to be able to then replay it to somebody else in a manner that's going to be useful.
So do people like handwriting stuff? Do you use like an application or just like a basic text editor? Do you have like a specific kind that you use?
I use my iPhone a lot for audio recordings, for my own note taking. But largely, you'll see I have like tons of little black books, and they're all filled with like case notes and things like that, and timestamps. So it's notebooks. Favorite thing.
Nice.
I've been asking some of my team to use a mind mapping application. It also helps us to try to, in the beginning, when everyone is like giving opinion and trying to understand everything, one is trying to put everything that is being talked about in a mind map, and that helps us when we need to split the work for each of our analysts. Okay, you check this part of the mind map, you check this part of the mind map, and that helps us. And also on the organization and documentation, one thing that has helped us or worked for us is the newest analyst in the team that still isn't familiar with everything helps or has most of the documentation job, so he can get in contact with each part of the team. Each part of the team has to tell him that he's keeping the documentation going, and that way they explain to him the each part of the documentation, and he constructs or assembles the documentation, and he learns in the process by communicating with each part of the rest of the team. I don't know if that makes sense, but it helps us to get the younger analysts up to speed on par to the other analysts.
Yeah, that's actually a great learning tip too, to have people that are new to something do the documentation, because you kind of you test how well you learn something by trying to explain it to someone else, and that applies to documentation.
Yeah.
So I actually use I've used Trello before, and you can actually create templates in Trello. So one of the things that I have is for O365 incidents, I actually have a response template card, and it actually has things like specific PowerShell commands I run to check certain things, and little reminders for me for like what to do. And then I basically create a new card from that template and then fill it out as I go. And that actually helps me summarize when I write kind of a short report for the information security team. Does anyone else have something, or do you want to move on? Anyone else?
I do legal pads because I like
Nice.
yellow paper. I have like 40 just scattered everywhere. That's what I do when I'm like in an incident, hot taking notes, just shorthand. Afterwards, I put everything in OneNote because I can at people to force them to collaborate and give them like tasks, and it's all in one place. And then make them write the summary in OneNote, so I could be like, "Ooh, copy paste to Outlook. Thank you. C-suite loves this." And then also mind maps and any diagrams. So I use Draw.io and Xmind. I'm very visual, and I find that that usually helps people comprehend it a little bit better.
Yeah, when you're
You just cut out Pierre.
Lost you, Pierre.
hold on. Is that better?
You're good. Yeah.
Okay. When you're figuring out an attack for the first time, it's really, really helpful because you map it all out. And I've told people when they're learning, think about what the attack is, and write out all the events that and then figure out how they're linked together. And it's a good way of learning through an attack cycle, and like say, okay, let's go through a Ryuk incident. What did it start at? What's the first thing here that we know of? And go back from there. What were the events and that sort of stuff like that? That's another good thing. But mind mapping, absolutely excellent. Great stuff.
Yeah, and like you said, draw it out. Yeah, we use a lot of link analysis. Who's first, patient one, where did it spread, and then we just link it all out. At the end of it, it just looks like a giant map, and we can start doing the timelines from that across the board, and we know exactly what happened. And it's really, really good for some of the learning analysts to look at that and be like, yep, that's where it started.
Back when we used to be in meet space more, big whiteboards would be great.
In my home office, I have a 4x6 foot glass whiteboard, and it's invaluable. It's great.
That's awesome. I'm jealous.
It's great. It's my favorite thing. So actually, one other note I want to point out, and I've heard this from my colleagues over in information security in my own organization, and that is having notebooks where you write down things with numbered pages in case they're confiscated for legal reasons, because that can definitely happen.
Yeah. I was just going to say, save everything, not only for legal purposes and like, because eventually you're going to get a case that goes to litigation, but also for end of year review, and then for when you move on to your next company. Some of this stuff I can't talk about, or you won't be able to talk about either, but you've got it. You know your skills.
Yep.
Yeah, that's great. All right. So the next question I have is, and actually we have just a couple more questions to go through. What open source tools would you recommend people learn to use? And I'm going to direct this at Neumann.
Oh, okay. This is okay. So I'm going to say this is a long question because there's a lot of tools that we use. I'll start segmenting off, and obviously there's so many experts on this panel, so I'll start with tools that I frequently use, and then pass it over to the panel to see what other tools that they have to use as well. So from network perspective, some of the open source tools that we definitely use are obviously Wireshark and Moloch, Network Miner. From a network analysis components, we would definitely use Saracata, Snort, Bro, or Zeek, as you call it now. Those are the ones that we use for the analytics component. When we look at log analysis, so any flavor of a SIM, Elk is fairly used in our organization. Splunk, Graylog, but it's not so much the tool because we all know it's just a glorified data collector. It's the queries that you run in these SIMs that is the key. So learn regex, definitely learn how to use the query languages, and then that would definitely take you very far. Other tools for data analysis, Procmon, Sysmon, obviously, Process Explorer. For some live analysis, we would use things like OsQuery. When we're looking at some of the encoding or base64 components, CyberChef by GCHQ is a fantastic free tool. A lot of detection tools or detection rules have already been created. So Sigma rules, Yara rules, we would ingest those and match it with the data set that we have. E-discovery, open source. Obviously, there's a lot of very expensive tools out there. I think the best one that I really like, and it's free, it's Autopsy. For memory analysis, volatility, obviously, but we also use some of the, it's free, but it's made by proprietary companies. So things like Redline from Mandiant, Recall for memory analysis. Other areas for malware analysis, we're looking at, NSA's Ghidra, obviously. IDA free. I know it's not the best, but it's okay. PE Studio is another really good one that we definitely use for malware analysis. OllyDBG, WinDBG, PEView, PEID, strings is the easiest one. You find a lot of great things in strings. Dependency Walker for any DLL. API calls. We're seeing a lot of API abuse. API Monitor is a really good tool. Then there's the sandboxes. We all know Cuckoo is a bit of a dumpster fire. Hasn't been updated in more than a year. Cape 2 is a good one, and it's recently just updated to Python 3, so that's a good sandbox. Our government has released its own little sandboxing tool, Assembly Line 4. It's a file analysis tool that was released. And of course, any of the free sandboxes out there. So any.run is a good one, Joe Sandbox, Triage, the hybrid analysis. Those ones were pretty good.
You're gonna have to post this list. It's
Oh my
amazing.
God, I got
You
it's a
absolutely need to post this
long
list. Yeah,
list.
well, good. I'm glad you got it written out. That's awesome.
And then cloud. So cloud monitoring is pretty big now.
Yes.
So obviously some of the tools that Azure has available. So Azure Security Center, ATA, Sentinel, CloudWatch for AWS, Chronicle for GCP. But again, this is a small list of all the tools that we have. Like I said, experts and folks in our company that we use. And most of these tools, obviously, I use on a regular basis as well for doing our malware analysis or incident response. So that said, I will let everybody else chime in because we have tons of tools in this industry.
I'm going to quickly jump in and just say, we're actually running a panel tomorrow that is a similar format to this, but it's actually on SIEMs and log analysis, or SIEM, whichever way you want to pronounce it. Fight me. So if you're interested, all of you watching, check out Blue Team Village's schedule for tomorrow. I believe it's at 11:30 CDT. But yeah, I mean, that's like, spinning up Elk Stack or Elastic Stack or whatever it's called nowadays is a really great practice set of tools to use. And with that, I will kick it out to everyone else if they want to add to that exhaustive list, if that's even possible.
One thing I would add, just a really small addition, is the Zimmerman tools. We use that often when we're doing disk analysis or file analysis or all the various things that it can be used for. So think about that as an option for when you're doing analysis.
I just thought of one more thing. Hex editor, the easiest one.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. I've worked with a lot of logs that come in JSON files or formats. So JQ is amazing for that. Like there's jqplay.com that I'm like frequently visited just because I constantly forget the syntax. But Neumann hit like most of them. Just remember that you've got a lot of built-in tools too, especially in Linux. So like I'm constantly wgetting or curling or ifconfig, that type of thing, just to get a baseline level of understanding. And then there's lots of like, hey, I need to figure out if this IP address that's in the network connections is bad. So Shodan, virus total, passive total. There's tons out there. We're coming up on Black Friday too, so make sure to watch out for tools that are giving student discounts or Black Friday discounts. Like Shodan, I think does $25 for a lifetime membership, which is a steal of a deal.
It's great.
John is an awesome dude too, so I love to throw money at him just to support it.
So we have about 15 minutes left. I'm going to check in and see if there are any other questions in the chat. But I'm going to throw the next question to Rhett. And this one is, what's the biggest challenge for you in learning technical tools or processes for incident response?
Okay. First, I would say getting the budget to run all those tools in a decent lab. But okay, let's imagine that I have the budget. Uh, uh, Trying to uh, related to the previous question, I was going to mention the some Active Directory tools that were mentioned, maybe more on detection, but the Bloodhound and Ping Castle, for example, helped us a lot on that side of things. So and segue into the other question, trying to reproduce a really large environment and diverse environment like the one we have with all the different business units. Specifically, all the legacy stuff, it's quite difficult sometimes for us to reproduce and to understand. One of the biggest challenges, I think, is when you have to do incident response and there's something involved that you have no idea about it. How do you use it to try to understand it really quick? Really old stuff, or well, stuff my age, not old, but my age, stuff in COBOL or AS 400, stuff like that. That there's not a lot of people that available to help you understand it and to be able to reproduce it. That's kind of the more challenging stuff, trying to understand really good technology that it's legacy technology, or that's how we call it. Sometimes that's the hardest part, and also trying to get to have access to a really good lab, a really good Active Directory lab, for example, and try to reproduce, or on the cloud. Sometimes trying to do incident response on the cloud, if you don't have the budget, or you don't have the access or availability to that technology, or to that type of cloud from outside of the US, sometimes it's not as easy to try to learn that stuff. But usually the for a lot of people outside the US, sometimes it's the language barrier. There's not much content done in Spanish, for example. There's some content being developed, like certifications. Not all the certifications are translated to other languages. So for incident responders, learning the language, the English language, is basic, and sometimes you have to really understand it to be able to it's like a second barrier. If you don't know English rather well and know the technical terms and definitions, it's hard. But that's specific to outside of the US. So I would say that specifically the legacy, and sometimes if you've never coded something, and you're faced in trying to use a specific tool that needs you to tweak code, uh, uh, for people that don't have a technical background but are really good analysts, sometimes it takes a while for them to get that. But it can be taught, as you mentioned earlier in the panel. So I would say those are some of the challenges that usually we have to face, having access outside of the US to some of the content, and and have a good budget available for being able to reproduce the technology or the cloud environment, or having access to the training content. Does
Yeah.
that answer the question?
Yeah, I think that those are some really good points. Accessibility to resources and language barrier is definitely something that we hear in the U.S. or Canada or in any country where English is a first language, or where maybe we've grown up with English as a second language that we're fluent in. We have to recognize it as a barrier and that we take for granted. So I think that's a really good point. All right, so we have about 10 minutes left at this point. I'm going to roll through some quick questions from the audience, and then I have like one kind of a one or two other ones. Let's see where I am. Basically, I'm like that. I'm like Rhett with two browsers and different windows full of different tabs, and I should have closed them before I did this, and I did not. My bad.
What's your memory
Um,
consumption?
I don't want to know. Let's see. Let's do this one. If you go to help in IR as a consultant and you don't get access to a SIM or IDR or EDR, and you need to ask info from answering tickets, how would you handle that? Any advice for that?
Oh boy. That sounds sort of wacky. So usually, again, when you get into the investigation, you're going to ask up front if you have access or will have access to data, or if they have logs, if they have evidence, if they have tools or whatever, and ask them if you can have access to it and how you get access to it. So perhaps the ticketing is a process of getting the access to there and getting the access, approved. You'd want to have access to the console natively or get the native raw logs to be able to do the analysis properly. You don't want a situation where someone's going to take a snippet of a log and put it into a ticket and provide you with a ticket response. That's not going to be a way of doing an investigation. So if that's what someone's telling you to do as an investigation, I would have a big red flag and say this is probably a non-starter. You need the raw evidence. I think everybody on this panel would agree. The way that we find the things we're looking for is by looking through the evidence, and it has to be intact and comprehensive. And so, depending on what the objective is, we'll want for different evidence. But that's where we start with.
Yeah.
This is a data science problem. So a good investigation has good data. So I would say that's a huge red flag if they're not going to give you access to information. That's I typically will fight for access.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that hopefully in scoping, if you're a consultant, you can say that's the way it's going to work. Then we'll see what we're going to do. And then when you get off the call, you say that's not going to go. We explain back to the customer the reasons why. And if they change their tune and say, "Oh, we're sorry, we didn't understand what you were asking for," sure, here's the raw logs, or we'll get this to you however you're asking for it. That's fine. They may not have understood the question at first. We'll give them the benefit of the doubt once. But absolutely, like you said, without good quality data, you can't have a good quality investigation. Non-starter.
Very true. All right, rapid fire question. Like I'm talking like 5-second answer. If someone's going to get a certification that applies to incident response, what certification would stand out to you?
SANS, forensics.
Yep. GCIH.
Cool. All right. And then let's see. What are some challenges to IR with cloud use and virtualization being on the rise? I think we touched a little bit on cloud, but is there a quick summary of what that challenge is?
One thing I've seen is that a lot of the logs that we would expect to be in place aren't, and the way that you get that data isn't the same way. Like you were saying before, new tools, new ways, new expectations, new compromises we need to be aware of. And sometimes the operating systems are the same or similar, but the environment, the overall holistic cloud environment lives in, doesn't give us the same logging or visibility that we're expecting. So that's a big thing. You say, oh, I need the NetFlow logs from, you're not going to get those. Maybe you will. But yeah, we have to compromise a little bit and maybe change our expectations or what we request for evidence.
Great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Understanding
so
also. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, go ahead.
Understanding
You
also
got
the
it, Mike.
intricacies of the cloud, right? So obviously layer 2 is gone. We all know that. Default settings in cloud environments, audit logging typically is not turned on. We need to have that set, turned on for a lot of cloud environments. So again, that's on the client's responsibility list.
Cool. All right, I have another rapid fire one. You're called to an incident. What's the first word that comes to mind, like a trigger for what you would do first? Just one word. Go.
A trigger or reaction? And can I go fast? Because
Most
usually it's
appropriate.
fuck. Like, because I'm in the middle of something else. Like, God damn it.
Right now? Really? Yeah.
Yeah. And then it's like, oh, hell yeah, let's go.
Yeah.
I can say several in Spanish, and I don't know if everyone will understand me, but
Yeah.
there's no SAP here, right?
Cool. All right. So I'm going to do a last quick round. And ask everyone to give me 30 seconds on the best way to break into IR. General words of advice for anyone looking to go into IR, like say 30 seconds each. Take it away. Anyone? Or everyone at once, that works too.
Okay, I'll hop in.
Pierre.
Best thing I can suggest is be curious, know the basics, know how things work together, ask questions, listen, and understand some of the attacks that are happening today. Understand how to track those attacks, how to look at those attacks, how to read the logs, knowing what events are created when things happen that are normal, like logging in, and when they're abnormal, and then how to be able to tell the difference between the two. Understanding how hypothesis works, how to then make a hypothesis and support it with evidence, and letting the evidence guide you towards a good answer.
So what my I guess my comments to the learners out there: sleep whenever you can. Apply the scientific method to your investigations. Sometimes you have to make decisions based on incomplete data. Do the best you can, and obviously, seek additional help if you've got your supervisors and your managers there as well. Other than that, take care of one another.
Advice.
Network. Like, go network, talk to people, meet people. It's even better with virtual conferences. Most of my jobs have been because I networked with people and talked to the right people, and I knew what I was getting into, which is an added bonus. Other than that, stay hungry, stay curious, take breaks, go for walks, get outside, drink water. You're probably dehydrated right now. And just remember, every incident ends. Literally, it's always going to be over. Might not be over in a day, but it's going to be over, and just keep that in mind.
Rhett, any
I would,
quick last words?
Yeah, I would say have empathy for the people that is suffering the incident. Try to understand what you're going to ask them to do. Be a skeptic. Always be try to see if there's another option and not jump on the first thing you see and think that's what explains everything. Don't create a history based on what you have. You have to go by the evidence. And yeah, be hungry, be empathy, and try to be passionate about it. Try to learn as much as you can, and it can be really fun if you take out the stress. There's a lot of things you can new things you can learn, and you can grow a lot on this area. So yeah, try to enjoy the trip.
Very cool. I'll contribute a couple last words. mainly for me, I'll echo the be curious, explore, learn everything that you possibly can. If you're just trying to break in, don't don't look at a job description and say, "Oh, I don't know all these things." Like, apply even if you think you only have half the skills. It's always worth it to try, and the worst thing that happens is someone says no, but don't say no to yourself. So that's my piece of advice, especially from someone who's not technically an InfoSec, and I kind of wormed my way into incident response anyways. There's so many ways that you can uh, support your information security team without even being in InfoSec. So consider that as well. And with that, that concludes this panel. So for everyone watching, if you would like to actually join us, we're going to do a Meet a Mentor happy hour, and that's going to be on the Blue Team Village Discord. There's a section called GrayHat 2020 Happy Hour with some voice channels. I, for one, really need a beer after this long, long day, so I will be hanging out in there along with other Blue Teamers. Our panelists are invited, although I think a couple of them have some incidents to work on, so they may be a bit busy. But again, thank you all. Your experience and words of wisdom are invaluable. And I know that we've answered quite a few questions and there will always be more. So to everyone else out there, feel free to post your questions. We'll try to answer them and just keep enjoying it. Thank you very much.